What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over which shotgun I think is best in Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 3 because we have gotten several changes to the shotguns in this season's loot pool. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below which shotgun is your favorite this season. So, as many of you already know, we have the Sentinel pump, the Outlaw shotgun, and the Twinfire auto shotgun returning from past seasons, right? However, both the Twinfire auto shotgun and the Outlaw shotgun have been buffed this season, and it's making many players kind of question which shotgun is best in the current loot pool. And I think all of them are actually quite good now. I definitely have one that I prefer, but if someone tells me they like one of the other ones, I don't think as much, I'm not as surprised as I was previously. I think they're all really solid now. If you guys don't know what the changes were, the Twinfire auto shotgun had its damage and max damage increased, but it's still really lacking in range, and its fire rate still feels like pretty meh to me for what's supposed to be like the auto shotgun, And then the Outlaw shotgun got a pretty significant buff to its damage, its maximum damage, its range, and its minimum damage, which is like the minimum amount of pellets you get credit for hitting if you just hit an enemy. And this buff is definitely pretty noticeable, and there are times or like certain situations and like certain fights where the Outlaw shotgun is just going to be the best weapon in the game with how fast you can kill. If you shoot out both shots and hit, really hard, you're going to down opponents incredibly fast, but it still really suffers from like having only 2 bullets, and the range and kind of minimum damage, while increased, still don't feel that great, and it still feels like a weapon that you really have to get in very close and basically barrel stuff your opponent with. And as I said, when this works out and it goes well, it's great, but this really isn't my preferred way to play. And I think it's like pretty feast or famine, and that like when it works out, great. When it doesn't work out, you're gonna feel like silly about it. It feels like the consistency of both of these weapons, not only in terms of like their damage output, but like how you are kind of encouraged to play in a fight, leads to both of these weapons being pretty inconsistent. I feel like the outcome is pretty inconsistent or like pretty coin flippy with these weapons. And that's kind of my main dislike of them, is kind of the play style that both of them encourage is not how I would prefer to play the game. And I feel like it's pretty risky in a lot of situations. I do have more detailed videos about the kind of like statistical changes these weapons had if you guys want to see that, but I just wanted to quickly go over it for this video. So my preferred shotgun is still going to be the Sentinel pump, and pretty much every streamer or good player I talk to or see playing the game is still preferring the Sentinel pump despite these changes. And so like I think these buffs were a good thing. I think both the Outlaw shotgun and the Twinfire auto shotgun are noticeably better than they were I still would prefer the Sentinel pump, mainly just because of like how you can play off movement and cover just feels so much better to me with the Sentinel pump because of its tighter pellet spread. This tighter crosshair makes the weapon much more consistent if your aim is good, and like the consistency with the shotguns in Fortnite is something that's difficult to talk about, but if your aim is good and you're on point, I think the Sentinel pump lends itself to being a decently consistent shotgun because that pellet spread is tight. And that's kind of like what I was talking about with the Outlaw. Like they increased the range, sure, but the pellet spread is so wide that it's like hard to do anything outside of like barrel stuff range with it. And I think that makes it harder to play off cover with, and it makes it harder to play off movement with. And like the Sentinel pump, I think just plays well when using both of those things to your advantage, and I think that is what's going to lead to being more consistent in fights and winning more fights like safely. The fact that I can play off cover well with the shotgun and not just feel like I have to all in jump on somebody, I think is a really big deal. So it's like not even the stats of these weapons that are holding them back at this point, it's mainly just the way they play, I think. And I also really prefer with the Sentinel pump how you can reload 1 shell at a time. In like chaotic situations, being able to just quickly put a shell into your shotgun or put 2 shells into your shotgun whenever you get a chance is really, I think it's really underrated, and it's something that can make a really big deal, especially with this season because fights play out pretty fast and there is a lot of mobility in the loot pool. And so even if your opponent doesn't get away, the likelihood of you like getting third partied, I think, is pretty significant this season. and being able to just quickly put a shell or two into your shotgun, shoot that shot, maybe put another shell in if you're playing off cover. Like, you just have more freedom with how you can play fights. Whereas with the Outlaw, if you need to reload, you need to reload. And then same with the Twinfire auto shotgun. If you need to reload, it's like an all or nothing reload. And that can definitely cost you in some situations, especially with the Outlaw only having 2 shots. If you miss one, or like if you're playing team game modes, and I'm mainly a solos player, but if you're playing team game modes, I think the advantage skews even more towards the Sentinel pump. There is a boon this season that reloads your weapons whenever you do some sort of parkour, and that really helps with the Outlaw shotgun and the Twinfire auto shotgun, because you have like that extra avenue to maybe get some ammo in your weapon without having to go through the full animation. Especially if you are S tier, if you like using the revolvers movement, that counts as parkour for that boon, so you can kind of like swap between the revolvers and the Outlaw shotgun to reload it. And that does work, but it's just something you don't even have to think about with the Sentinel pump. It just works, and it's already like convenient in that way. You don't need to have a boon, you don't need to get S tier. You could just play the game with the pump. So I think the Sentinel pump is still, it's my preferred choice, and I still think it's the best shotgun in the game, despite the gap getting much smaller. And I have seen a lot of players this season saying they think the Sentinel pump was secretly nerfed. I have not been able to find any sort of evidence of this through like testing or just looking online. And I've tested a few different things with it, and there was no changes from my experience. And I also haven't seen any news sources that post about weapon changes by looking at game code. So like Osiren or Fortnite Assist. I haven't seen either of these accounts post about the Sentinel pump being, you know, silently nerfed. And I think at this point, if there were changes, someone would have found out what it was and posted about it by now, with the amount of, you know, accounts there are out there that just like post things from the game code or post weapon stats based on the game code. A lot of times when Fortnite themselves says they nerfed or buffed a weapon, they don't even say the hard numbers, and it's on like those accounts to look through the code and find out what changed. And again, none of them have posted anything about the Sentinel pump being nerfed. And like I said, I think at this point, if that happened, it would have been, you know, public knowledge by now. So I don't think the Sentinel pump was nerfed. I think it's the best shotgun in the game. I don't think the gap is as large as it was, but it's still my preferred shotgun, and it still is a playstyle that I would prefer to play, and the playstyle that I think is the one that most good players gravitate towards. Like I said at the start of the video, though, all of these shotguns are solid, and whatever works for you is the one you should use. I think both the Twinfire auto shotgun and the Outlaw shotgun are much easier to use, while the Sentinel pump kind of requires better aim to be good with. And I think that's something that, you know, a lot of people struggle with. So if your aim isn't the greatest, like, sure, you can pick up the Outlaw shotgun, just be close to the opponent, and you'll hit 2 hard shots and potentially send them back to the lobby. And so if someone says they prefer these other shotguns, I don't think they're crazy, but I definitely think I would prefer the Sentinel pump still. So one final thing I want to talk about is that they are close enough now to where like rarity might be more of a factor for me than it was previously, especially like early on in the game. So if I have the choice of between like a gray pump or maybe a blue Twinfire or a blue Outlaw, I might be more inclined to use that blue Outlaw for now, at least until I'm able to find a different Sentinel pump than I previously would have been. I think before I was just taking a pump no matter what, but I have noticed sometimes in the early game, I'm like, this blue Outlaw is about to be better for the fight that I'm about to get in, so I'll use this. But for most fights, I do prefer the pump still. And there's one other thing I wanted to say about this. Oh yeah, the exotic Outlaw is crazy. It hits for 130 to the body. And so the exotic Outlaw is pretty busted, but it's still on thin margins of like any sort of error, and your game is just kind of tossed potentially. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below which shotgun is your favorite, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.